Is Jed York going to continue to pay for the 49ers to be good? And we got the biggest example yet of how a Super Bowl hangover could affect the 49ers in 2024. We'll get to all that and more on today's Stats and Cohn. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Stats and Cohn here on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Grant Cohn. Grant, you're nodding your head. Do you approve?
I like that. That was a really nice intro, man. Gold Standard is leveling up. Congratulations.
Thank you. You know, we're trying to do some things here.
That was nice.
So we'll get to an article from Tim Kawakami that I think is kind of a big deal. Grant was texting me. He's poo-pooing. So we'll get to that.
Plus, that was private.
Plus, Logan Ryan had a really interesting comment on the herd, which I would love to play for you. But if I do, I won't be able to monetize this video. So that is not going to happen. I'll just tell you what he said. Anyway.
Smart move.
Get right to it. Tim Kawakami has an article in The Athletic about Jed York and will he continue to pay for the 49ers to be good? And in the article, which I can drop a link to in the chat, you know, he talks about how when you give guys signing bonuses and guaranteed money, you got to pay that out of your pocket. And it's a big check. And to his credit, as Tim points out, Jed has been doing that, right? We know the names: Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, yada, yada, yada. But Brock's contract is due. And this was the thing that stuck out to me, Grant. Throws Christian McCaffrey in there. Like it's just a given that McCaffrey is part of this. Considering the cost of what will get Ayuk and McCaffrey on board for this coming season, the huge dollars the 49ers have already committed, and the looming prospect of a mega deal for Brock Purdy next offseason, will York make the vast financial commitment necessary to keep most of this core together for a few more years, or will the Niners go through more problematic negotiations and high-profile departures in order to keep the costs from spiraling? He throws McCaffrey in there like it's just a given that he's sitting out OTAs because he wants more money.
Well, if you read the article, it's a lot of like interesting questions and hypotheticals. It's right on the money in terms of what needs to be talked about right now. And I think the best point that Tim brought up is the Eric Armstead release, how the Niners handled that and the effect that would have on other players. Like Eric Armstead was making almost $20 million a year. He's a captain. He was respected. They asked him to take like a 200% pay cut, right? It was like, go from making 18 million a year to 6. And he said, absolutely not. And then made just what he thought he was going to make on the open market. So if the Niners would do that to Armstead, who won't they do that? So I think a lot of vets approaching 30, probably looking at their contract thinking, God, they could do that to me if I miss 4 games due to injury or whatever happens. So I think you see people trying to secure the bag, so to speak.
And I know there's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure they're in the chat. Oh, Christian McCaffrey. No, it's not about money. He's planning for his wedding. He's got a wedding coming up. It's not that. Look, there are professional wedding planners, okay? They're paying people to handle that. And also, there's no reason why Christian McCaffrey can't go to OTAs in the morning or the afternoon and then come home and help with the wedding in the same day. It's not like, well, I did practice. That's it. I can't do any wedding planning. It's a ridiculous argument. People just don't want to think that the 49ers have to pay Christian McCaffrey more money. And I think it's hilarious, especially as someone who has planned a wedding and has been married for 15 years. It's not that hard, okay? It's just not. Were you listening?
Sorry, I had to unplug the phone. It was talking to me.
Oh, well.
But
did you hear what I said about McCaffrey and the wedding planning?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You know what I mean? Like, I've been through that. You've been through that. If I would think McCaffrey has a lot of money and has a lot of help and isn't doing that much. Like he's probably being like, yeah, I like that decision. That's a good one. Yeah, let's go with that.
Also, as my friend Valerie on Twitter has pointed out, McCaffrey's colorblind. So
really?
Are you really taking his advice on wedding stuff?
Is that true?
Yeah. Apparently, according to his fiance, she put in an Instagram video that Christian McCaffrey's colorblind because he was looking out the window saying, oh, look at all the colors. And she was like, you can't see the colors anyway. And he was like, well, there's light gray and dark gray.
Okay. Well, look, I think look, the main points that Tim's talking about in this is not just what Eric Armstead situation did to the locker room, but also Jed hasn't necessarily given out guaranteed money like this. This is new for him. This is like the new NFL. And I think Nick Bosa was a record for guaranteed money. Brandon Ayuk's going to approach that. It's going to be about $70 million guaranteed. And then God knows how much guaranteed money Brock Purdy's going to get. And this is going to be all within a couple of years of, back to back to back. So this is the Yorks digging deep into their pockets for cash to put in an escrow to keep this going. And you'd think they will because they always have. But then you look at the Armstead situation and you think, well, although I completely agree with what the Niners did with Armstead. I don't think that was necessarily a financial move. I think that was the right football move. I think it's what Bill Walsh would have done. You get rid of a guy a year too early, not a year too late. And they might have got rid of Armstead a year too late. So I could see why vets are a little nervous. But I still think, I'm not even a York guy. I think they like being in the playoffs. They like being a marquee franchise. I think they're going to pay. Look at it as an investment.
I agree. I think the 49ers were right to do with Armstead what they did. Yeah. It stinks for him, and I get why he didn't want to take the pay cut. I understood everybody's actions on both sides there. Lee Ving says the team is worth $6 billion with $622 million in revenue in 2023. Is Jed going broke? No, not even close. Absolutely.
Right. But if he starts cutting corners and making financial decisions, people will look at the Niners a lot differently. All of a sudden, they won't be the Cowboys of the West Coast. They won't be a marquee franchise. They'll be a penny pinching franchise that's content to be in the mix. So I think this is a critical moment for Jed, and how he approaches it is going to color how people view the franchise.
Especially because it's easy to shell out a lot of money when it's not quarterback money, because quarterback money is different. Quarterback money is a lot more, frankly. Brock Purdy, is going to sign a contract that's going to pay him $40 to $50 million a year. That's more than Bosa or Warner or, anybody else at the 49ers or Trent Williams that the 49ers have paid. So that is a different, I think that's kind of Tim's point of the article, is like this particular situation has not really come up with this group before.
Right. And I think it's clear the Niners are like eager to give Brock Purdy his money. Jed York's already come out and said he's basically ready to do it. And I don't think they're going to make Brock Purdy wait. I think they'll probably give it to him as soon as the offseason starts, like they did with Jimmy Garoppolo so long ago.
No. Wait till July and August, right, Grant?
I don't think they're going to do that. They didn't do that with Jimmy.
Right.
They didn't do it with Trent. They got that done because those guys are, I really don't understand why the Niners drag out these negotiations. I don't think it helps them at all. But they won't with Brock, and I think the Niners are eager to spend all that money. They'll be proud to spend all that money and to say they have a franchise quarterback, but that could squeeze out certain players. And I think you're seeing it with Brandon Ayuk. Like, Niners are like, do we really have it? Do we really have it? Can we really give him whatever he wants, or do we have to negotiate over a couple $1 million? And if that's the case with Brandon, then Christian's being like, damn, like, am I a cap casualty? Who's a cap casualty? Debo. Everyone's talking that Debo could be gone next year, right? Well, who showed up to OTAs in great shape? Debo.
Day one, he was there. And you know what? Last time Debo's money was going to be affected was 2021, and he had one of the best seasons any wide receiver has ever had. So
true. Let's
get that Debo again this year. The other part of the Kawakami article that I thought was interesting is there's a lot in there about McCaffrey and what McCaffrey might, quote unquote, want. Tim says specifically the final 2 years of McCaffrey's deal guaranteed, plus another year added on. Then there's a lot of paragraphs in there about how important Christian McCaffrey is to the 49ers offense and all this stuff. And I can't help but wonder if Tim's got a source within McCaffrey's people that's feeding him a little info, that's trying to get him to put a little pressure on the 49ers to take care of Christian McCaffrey. And my evidence for this, Grant, goes all the way back to just before Christian McCaffrey was traded to the 49ers. I point to this article in The Athletic. Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers are a natural fit as the trade market heats up. This was just before the McCaffrey trade went through. And the whole article is all about how Christian McCaffrey fits with the 49ers, why it could work, why if the 49ers included a second-round pick, they'd be able to trade for Christian McCaffrey. And I said at the time, and I remember thinking this, why is Tim Kawakami taking all this time to write this article unless he knows that Christian McCaffrey is about to be traded to the 49ers? And what happened like 2 days later? McCaffrey got traded to the 49ers.
You love guessing about people's sources. Maybe Tim has a source on this one. He kind of seems like he does. But I don't think you need a source to understand where Christian's coming from here. Like he just won the Offensive Player of the Year. He is pretty much universally regarded as the MVP of the 49ers offense, if not the entire team. And he's looking at $11.8 million this year, not guaranteed, while players who most people would agree are inferior to him are pouting and complaining about only being able to make $14+ million this year. So I could see, I mean, look, the Niners are eager to give Brock Purdy like 50-something million dollars a year. Christian McCaffrey was third in the MVP voting this year. Purdy was fourth. So he understands he's not going to be making Brock Purdy money, but I think on the other hand, he probably feels there's an argument that he should be making a lot more, considering everyone agrees he's the most important player on the team, on the offense.
I would agree. I mean, look at how the offense got better once he arrived, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo, quarterback, or Brock Purdy, a quarterback. It didn't matter. The offense was immediately better when he got there. And right. I think we all know why he's incredible. He puts stress on the defense, all that stuff.
One more thing.
Yes.
It's funny how Brandon Ayuk's trying to put a little pressure on the Niners by not showing up. Like, let's see what my absence does to this offense. I think a lot of people feel the Niners would be okay without Ayuk. No disrespect to Ayuk. He's a great player, a very good player. But I think a lot of people feel the Niners would be just fine on offense without him. You take McCaffrey away, though, we don't know what that looks like. And it's it's like, okay, Brandon, I raise you. I'm out too. Let's see who really moves the needle here.
It's an interesting point, and I think that would certainly quiet some of the Brock Purdy critics if McCaffrey did stay away and the Niners offense did have success without him. Yeah. We don't know what that all. We've never seen Brock without Christian, so we don't know what it would look like. I would fight anyone that says that Brock Purdy is just like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Brock has been better than Jimmy Garoppolo in a lot of ways. So I think the offense, even without Christian McCaffrey, would still be better than the Jimmy Garoppolo offense without Christian McCaffrey. How much better? I don't know, particularly if Ayuk isn't there too. Now you're really getting down to the nitty gritty.
Does it feel a little bit like Ayuk has kind of set sort of almost a negative tone for this year? Like the theme of this year is, what am I worth? How important am I? And am I getting properly, not even compensated, but like, am I getting credit for what I do here? And once Ayuk has put his sort of like flag in the ground, like, no, I'm elite. And it doesn't matter that you don't give me the ball or that I'm the fourth option sometimes. I'm freaking elite, and that's how you're going to pay me. It seems like other people on this team are following suit. Like, yeah, it's time. It's time. We've sacrificed. We lost. We're still here. I need to get paid what I need to be acknowledged for how good and how important I am. And it's like, that's not team building. That's not really what you want. It's not what you had last year.
It's the reality of the success that you've had. It's inevitable. You can't have the kind of wins and playoff runs and Super Bowl runs that this team has had without that becoming a thing. It's just the reality of the sport that they play. And I do think part of it for Ayuk is, okay, you're not going to show me the love by giving me the targets and the catches and the opportunity to produce like these other wide receivers. Well, you're going to show the world that you do think I'm just as good as those guys, not with what happens on the field, with the way you pay me. And I think that's part of it. I think he does want credit and recognition. And I don't know that the 49ers are going to give it to him, to be honest with you.
It's just interesting how like all these players have sort of kept it quiet for a while because they had a goal of winning the Super Bowl. And now it's like you see all the grievances come out. Like Ayuk doesn't get the ball enough, so he wants more money. McCaffrey doesn't have that issue. He gets the ball as much as he can physically handle, but he's paid less than Kittle. And, like enough is enough. He was third in the MVP voting. This isn't fair anymore. And it's like, man, Juwan Jennings has a grievance. No one cares. But even he has a grievance. Like, wow, that's sort of the vibe around the team right now.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings hasn't signed his restricted free agent tender.
God love you, Juwan.
And I said this last week. Like, this is a bold move. They drafted a wide receiver in the first round, and you're not showing up to OTAs. Like, dude, they don't care if you're not there. They have Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. Like, that is.
It's like if I dropped like a rap diss track the same day that Drake and Kendrick did. Like, dude, no one paid attention to you. Why don't you pick another day to make your stand?
The Farrah Fawcett died the same day Michael Jackson died, and
I didn't know that.
Of course you did.
Poor Farrah. Yeah.
Jackson died.
Yeah.
We got this super chat from Sean Barnes.
Ooh.
The Niners will extend McCaffrey when he stops fumbling in the red zone. That's pretty harsh considering I believe Christian McCaffrey had like 2 fumbles all year. And the one against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl was not in the red zone.
Oh, it was close to it, though. I mean, you could argue that fumble was the biggest play of the Super Bowl or the most impactful play. I mean, wow. If he hadn't fumbled there, they probably score on that drive. It's probably a different game. But it happens.
People, I know Rich Madrid, I've been arguing with Rich Madrid about that exact thing, how much impact that fumble had. He certainly thinks it was the most important play of the game.
But it was early. It was early.
And look, McCaffrey, we remember his fumbles, right? Because he had one in the red zone against the Cowboys in a game, which, by the way, the 49ers destroyed Dallas, but he did fumble going into the end zone, and then he fumbled in the Super Bowl. But, like, he doesn't have a fumbling problem.
Well, it's just interesting how he fumbled, Ray fumbled, and you're tough. We are tough on Ray because it's like, man, you had one job. Don't do that. But with McCaffrey, it's like, shouldn't he be held to a higher standard? That's the offensive player of the year. Like, the game plan was give the ball to Christian, let him be Terrell Davis, and bring this championship home. And he couldn't do it. Well, not like that. Like he didn't cement himself as an all-time great Hall of Fame running back. He's still excellent A+, but he had the opportunity and he couldn't do it. And he fumbled. And he averaged 3.5 yards a carry. Like, I'm sure he's still pissed about that, as he should be.
But the reason we're more harsh on Ray McCloud is because Christian McCaffrey had 21 touchdowns last year.
That's true. 17
Absolutely. More touchdowns in his career to reach that. So
I happen to think, and stop me if you disagree, but I think Christian is a better player than Ray. I do. I'll say it on your show, on our show.
Woo.
Yeah, that's right.
That is
hot takes.
Man.
But I'm a clickbait guy. You know what I mean? I'm always going for that controversial take.
Yeah, you're always out there, just throwing out the wild takes. Christian McCaffrey is better than Ray. Woo, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's going to make some
That just takes courage to say in public.
So we'll see. You're saying McCaffrey's going to stay away. Do you think that just guaranteeing his contract for the next 2 years is enough, or you think they got to give him more than that?
I don't know. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, how many players are you going to need to appease now because you cut Eric Armstead? Like, so whatever Christian wants, whatever Brandon wants, whatever Jawan wants, like, where do you draw the line? And like, how with Bosa, you kept negotiating until early September. Are you going to do that with Brandon? Are you going to do that with Christian? Like, they're in a tough spot. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You want to have these guys happy and here because this is an all-in Super Bowl year. This is as much as an all-in year as last year was. It doesn't feel like it, though. So the Niners have to decide what they want to do. Do you want to win the Super Bowl or do you want to win these negotiations? If you want to win the Super Bowl, I think you need to make Christian happy. Probably need to make Brandon happy. And if that hurts your future, you know what? The Rams were willing to do that. They hurt their future. They mortgaged the future for one real run at the Super Bowl, which they got. And I think maybe the Niner fans are not a people look at them like, oh, the Rams, that was so silly. Like, no, they're champions. And they wouldn't trade that for anything. And maybe if you want to be champions, get Brandon Ayuk the hell into camp, the hell into the offseason. It didn't help with Nick Bosa last year. That was my question, Rob. What do they gain from this long, drawn-out process? It seems like every time they do it, the player is a down season.
They would argue that they save money, I guess.
Good for them. What's the goal?
I mean, how much are you really...
Did they save money with Nick Bosa, though? That's the thing. They gave him $34 million a year. You didn't save money.
Even if you did, so, okay, you're not paying him 35, 30, like, is it, is the cost of Nick Bosa having a down year worth the millions you save? I guess that's what you have to answer. By the way, just real quick, Rams didn't really mortgage the future. They missed the playoffs in 2022. They had massive injuries. They were a playoff team last year.
That's right. They rebuilt pretty quickly. They got a bunch of new young guys. They drafted well.
So, yeah,
I know Niner fans look down their noses at the Rams, but they're champions.
It all worked out for the Rams. I don't think it would change anything about how that whole situation worked out. You talked about and you brought up the guys that want to get paid and whether that vibe is affecting this year. I heard Logan Ryan with Colin Cowherd yesterday, and Colin asked him, do you remember your first day in the 49ers facility? And he was like, yeah, it was a Tuesday, and I went there, and there were 30 to 40 people on their off day in the workout room, and they were stars. It was Debo, Kittle, it was Brock. They were all there working out, and Logan Ryan said, when I went home, I told my wife, like, damn, this team is going to be a special team because that's not a common thing. He said, we only had that a couple years with the Patriots when the Patriots were kicking ass. When we talk about a Super Bowl hangover, the way that shows up, instead of just being something we say, the way that shows up is guys on a Tuesday saying, you know what? I'm so tired.
Yep.
I'm playing deep into the playoffs. I'm really tired. I'm kind of banged up. I could go to the facility and work out, but I'm just going to go home. I just can't do it today. And instead of 40 or 30 guys there at the facility, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 10. And by the way, that doesn't make those people bad people. I'm not saying
it makes them human beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there is a cost and a toll that being this good for this long takes. And it's really hard to get your ass in that facility again, another week for another year. It's just very, very hard to do.
Yeah. It's not baseball. It's sacrifice and pain. It's football. And it's like, you can't sustain this level of extra giving 110% all year. And like, so what drives you to do it when you do it? Players, they think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? Man, I'm never going to be on a team like this again. Chase Young gets here. Logan Ryan got out of retirement to be on this team. Like, man, we're going to win a championship. This is one of the best. This is a great opportunity. And not only will I, make money, but I'll be a legend. Like this will cement my legacy. I could go to the Hall, all these things. And then it drives you to the Super Bowl and you get this close and you lose. And how do you do it again? It's like, it wasn't that was the once in a lifetime opportunity. Now it's the next year. And we did that last year. All the extra stuff you could possibly do. And it didn't really pay off the way we hoped it would. It's deflating. It's exhausting. And I think it's hard to be like, all right, let's do it again. Let's climb the mountain again. Like, you know what? Not today.
Like there is, not everybody's the kind of person that can go 120% when there's no guarantee of a payoff, right? Like if you knew for a fact, hey, you're going to make an extra 20% if you do another YouTube video, Grant, it's guaranteed, book it. It's a lot easier to do your third, fourth, fifth YouTube video of the day if you know that 20% is guaranteed. But if it's not guaranteed and you may get that 20%, you may get 50%, or you may get zero, I may
go golfing.
Right. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Do another video. And that's what it is with the 49ers is you got to work that hard and do all that stuff. And you still might not get it, as they just saw last year.
It's rare to have a team like what was Logan Ryan saying? Like, it's rare. I was on the Patriots. We didn't have that all the time. So like, what teams can harness that for a year? Teams like the Niners last year. Teams, it seems like the Packers this year. It's like teams that are good, but maybe you're on the way up and feel like they missed their opportunity last year and they're not going to miss it again. There's only a few teams at a time that even feel that way. It's not teams like freaking Arizona. They know they're a year away. Seattle knows they're a year away. It's a team that feels like there's some urgency. This is the year. And I think when you lose the Super Bowl, it's hard to feel like this is the year. It's more like, well, that was the year. And we freaking blew it. And it hurts.
I think a little extra motivation for the Niners last year was the way the 2022 ended, right? It was our quarterbacks got taken away from us.
It wasn't fair.
Was stolen. We're going to prove that we should have been in the Super Bowl and we were going to win it and we were the best team.
We're the best team.
And I think that was extra motivation. That was
oh my God. It's all the motivation they need. I mean, it was great. And now, I mean, that's the kind of motivation that the Packers are saying, right? Like, oh, we let them off the hook. We're going to prove it this year. Yeah, you may or may not, but like, that's the right attitude. Whereas the Niners this year, like the leader of the team is Nick Bosa. He's the highest paid player in the organization, person in the organization. And he was talking about the Super Bowl hangover or, coming back off of that. And what he said was, oh, the past is in the past. We're ready to move forward. That's the attitude of the team. I mean, and that's what more can you say? What more can you? There's no galvanizing way to look at how they lost that game. It's over. It happened. Gotta move on. Like, that's a gut punch. As opposed to, we were robbed. We were freaking robbed. There was a holding. There was an injury. There was man, that sucked. What happened? That freaking sucked. We got to move on.
We were robbed is a lot more of a motivating factor than we weren't good enough. And last year,
that's why this team is so interesting. Is that what they tell themselves when they look each other in the eye in the locker room? You know what, guys? Doggone it. We weren't good enough. Or is there a little bit of Kyle did it again? It's Kyle's fault. Kyle didn't know the rule. Kyle didn't go for it on fourth down. Kyle's offense scored X amount of points. You know what I mean? Like, is this team that's been coached by him for almost 2 presidential terms finally looking at him like, man, you have a pattern. You have a pattern. You should have some culpability here. I wonder. I guess we'll don't know.
I don't think so, Grant. And here's why. I know we've got a couple super chats. I'm going to get to them. Trust me. Because we haven't seen anybody on social media, in a subtweet, anybody criticize Kyle for the overtime coin toss decision or not going for it at the end of the game.
Willie Snead took some shots.
Well, but not at Kyle, though. I mean, not
True.
about.
You're right.
You would think that if there was some of that in the locker room, that we would have seen it in some way. How would they have kept it under wraps if that existed?
It's a good point. Now, my theory is that this could be new. This could be resentment, and the team really hasn't been together. So let's see if this pops up during a losing streak this season, if they have one. It's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that they're like out on Kyle, but it seemed like for 7 years, they were very, very much in on Kyle. Like, this is our guy. We believe in him. We play for him, and we trust him that he's going to get us to the finish line. I wonder if there's a little bit of like wavering in that belief at this point.
And it'd be, I mean, I would love to go into the 49ers workout room in the first off day. Are there still 30 people there? And Kyle has been able to sort of galvanize the team. Even when they were losing in 2017 and 2018, they were all in. They were behind him. It's hard to maintain that for this long.
Like, what does George Kittle really think of Kyle Shanahan now? You've known him for 8 years. You went to 2 Super Bowls with him. Second time you went, he gave you 2 passes. What do you really think of Kyle now? I'd love to know. Because, I mean, what Kittle thinks kind of matters. He's one of the longest tenured players in the team.
We've been talking a lot about Tim Kawakami's latest article in The Athletic. Hot Fat Guy Club says, Grant, what's your professional relationship with Kawakami like?
It's professional. I've known him since I was about 22 years old. See him all the time. I'll see him today. I'll say hello.
You guys are not going to the French Laundry together?
No, although I've had dinner with Tim any number of times. Not one-on-one, but, you know, in a group.
Who paid?
My dad, when I was a kid.
Well done.
Yep.
Red X916 says Eric Armstead leaving shows that he doesn't think the Niners will win the Super Bowl, which I agree with. They lost their only chance.
That's an interesting point, too. Because, again, in the past, it was a whole culture of let's sacrifice. This team's going to win. It doesn't really, we can worry about the money. The money will take care of itself. We'll be champions. It'll all be good. But now it's like, you'd rather play for Jacksonville than the 49ers? Is all the same? That's a vote of no confidence. And maybe it's not all on Kyle, but it is kind of like we had our chance and we're not going to be better than that team last year.
I look at that as more Eric Armstead knows that's probably the last deal he's going to sign. And you know what? I went to 2 Super Bowls. We took a shot. It didn't work out. Now I got to make sure I get the bag the last chance.
And Trent Baalke's going to give it to me, baby. I don't know what you want me to say. I feel him on that. Like, I know Trent Baalke. He's going to give me the bag. It's going to be a bad decision for him, but I'm going to take it.
I don't blame Armstead for doing that, by the way. If you think of your options, make a lot more money or take a massive pay cut with the 49ers.
It's a no-brainer. In fact, also, like, when the Niners come to you and say, we want you to take a 200% pay cut, that really hurts your ego, first and foremost. And to be able to, like, trump them and say, well, actually, I'm leaving to a tax-free state that's going to pay me more. Have a good time with Malik Collins. Toodaloo. Like, that feels good.
Right. The Florida thing, I think, is I think that's absolutely real. This is my last chance to get the bag. I'm going to maximize it. And maybe it's like, hey, maybe we will win the Super Bowl. Who knows? But I don't think that Armstead leaving was just purely all about doubting the 49ers' chances of winning the Super Bowl.
Hey, if the Jaguars get to the Super Bowl, they do happen to have a head coach who's won one. So I don't know. They got a chance.
Yeah, I don't think.
Although he's not that. He's in the hot seat right now, Doug Peterson. Right now.
Yeah, I would think so. Especially because you haven't gotten the play out of Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly.
Thought you were going to get. I'm out on Trevor Lawrence. I think we've seen enough to know that he ain't it. But
I think there's a little bit of like a coach killer in Lawrence and Herbert. Like, they're really talented, and so the expectations are that they should be winning and throwing for 5,000 yards. And if you can't get that out of them as a coach, you're fired.
Fired. Coach is usually the one that pays for that. So
yeah. So we'll
will
see about that.
I thought the Logan Ryan comments on the herd yesterday were really interesting. He also said he still thinks the 49ers are in the window, which I think we all agree they can make at least one more run at it.
I just want to say one thing. The Niners better get their crap together. They're having a real leisurely start to the offseason, and it makes sense because they're an older team that had a longer season, but the Jets are not playing around. That's a team with an elite defense and a Hall of Fame quarterback who should be healthy for that game. I don't know how long he could stay healthy, but he should be healthy for that game. They have maybe not an elite running back, but like a tier 2 running back. They better be ready for that. This is a whole different test than Pittsburgh week 1 last year, I think.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Hassan Reddick. I mean, it's a really good team.
The guy that hurt Brock now plays for the Jets, and the guy that hurt Rodgers now plays for the Niners. God help us if they both get hurt. Leonard Floyd is the guy that tackled Aaron Rodgers that popped the Achilles.
How about that?
So
in your face, Aaron.
Everybody gets through that game healthy.
Is Aaron going to be playing in that game, or is he running for president? I don't.
Technically, it was vice president.
Oh, sorry. Give him 4 years. He seems like he's really got the pulse of the nation.
Would you be shocked at this point?
No.
I hope they somebody asked, we were going through the schedule last week on one of the shows, and somebody asked if there was one game that you could guarantee the 49ers win on the schedule during the regular season, what would it be? I think it's that game. I cannot stand Aaron Rodgers. Oh. I just think he's such a phony. I think he's a hypocrite. And so I think I would take that week 1 win.
It's my favorite story. So when I go, they're going to be in Green Bay this year, and I'll be there. And when you finally make it to Green Bay, it's a kind of a small town near Canada. It's way up there. It's hard to get there. You take Ubers. I like it. I'm a journalist. I'll just be asking questions. So so are you from Green Bay? How long you been here? It's like, have you ever met Aaron Rodgers? A lot of people say, yeah, he's a jerk. Like, oh. So the whole little town knows about you, huh? Yeah, I guess.
It's weird.
Oh.
It's very strange with the 49ers. Like, let's be honest. If Aaron Rodgers was drafted by the Niners in 2005, they probably have a Super Bowl by now. I would argue that they would have probably just one, but I think they would have a Super Bowl by now. If the 49ers had a different coach other than Kyle Shanahan, they might have a Super Bowl by now. They might not be
simply by not passing on Mahomes.
But they might have one. It's really weird how the road less traveled by the 49ers, even though they might not be better off as a whole, they probably would have had a championship, I think.
It is interesting, though, that the franchise that's known for quarterback play and has 2 of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time passed on Rodgers and Mahomes. That's rough.
And Tom Brady, let's be honest.
Well, yeah. But it's like the Rodgers and Mahomes year, it's like you needed a quarterback. They went in round 1. You looked at him and you were like, not for me. Like, ooh, that hurts for generations. That really hurts.
Right. You looked at, not only did you look at both, you looked at them like side by side, right? You were directly comparing Aaron Rodgers and Alex Smith. And Aaron Rodgers is so much more talented throwing the football than Alex Smith. It is not even.
And he played at Cal. He was there. I mean, I'd seen him play in high school. Everyone knew he was great. How did you took the guy from Utah?
And Utah? Rodgers wanted to be a 49ers. He at the time he would have taken a discount because remember, there was no rookie wage scale back then.
Right.
You had to pay these guys like crazy guaranteed money. He was going to even take a discount. And Mike Nolan still said, I don't like, and maybe he just pissed him off during the evaluation.
Well, now we see what he's like. I could see being turned off by a 22-year-old version of Aaron Rodgers. Are you kidding?
Yeah, that's true.
As opposed to Alex Smith, who's just relentlessly kind.
Incredibly nice.
Oh. And not just nice, but like an upstanding gentleman who could be a CEO or someone you could trust to run something as opposed to Aaron Rodgers who would just talk shit. Sorry.
I'm curious. Corey Soto says, you're big despite the Super Bowl losses as an epic era guy, which is true. But what is your limit? When do you say we move on from Kyle? I got to tell you, I don't know. I was on the air for ESPN Radio this week on Monday, and we were talking about the NBA and the conference finals. And we were talking in the conference finals just about there's a frustration with the Celtics because they've been close. They've gone to the finals. They've gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they haven't gotten it done. And I felt like that was very similar to the 49ers. But in the NBA, I feel like you don't win because you're not good enough way more than the NFL, which I feel like, honestly, there's a lot more luck involved in the NFL and the Super Bowl. The Chiefs recovered, what was it, 6 of the 7 or 6 of the 8 fumbles in the Super Bowl? Like, and because it's a one and done situation rather than a series, I do think it comes down to luck a lot more than people want to admit. And so my tolerance for Kyle Shanahan and head coaches and quarterbacks and stuff and like cores of teams is a lot greater in the NFL than it is in other sports.
Those are fair points. At the same time, he doesn't have a lifetime contract. And this is a franchise where George Seifert coached for 8 years and Bill Walsh coached for 10. And they won multiple Super Bowls. And Bill Walsh even said that a coach really shouldn't coach a place for more than 10 years. Now, maybe that's not true, but what he would say is that eventually his message sort of gets watered down, or not watered, but players just don't hear it anymore. They've been hearing the same voice, the same message for so long. I think we saw it with Pete Carroll. They just sort of tuned it out. And if that's how Bill Walsh felt, I'm not saying fire Kyle now. I'm not saying not, but I do think there is some pressure on him, man. Like, you haven't won a Super Bowl yet. Are you still improving? Have we seen your peak? Can you retool this team as it gets older? Like, I think he's at a little bit of a crossroads. Like, you couldn't win the Super Bowl last year with maybe the best team you've had, you're going to have. So what's next for you? Can you pivot and turn and improve? Or is it a slow decline like we saw with Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick? He's not a young coach anymore. He's right there in the middle, and he's been here a while. And people compare him to Andy Reid. A lot of people feel Andy Reid needed to leave Philadelphia and start somewhere else, and that's true for some coaches.
Well, I want to point out that Bill Walsh wasn't fired. Bill Walsh was burned and left.
Well, was he fired? I wasn't. I was 1 year old. A lot of people feel he was forced out, but I have to ask my dad about that one.
It was last year. He wasn't.
I have to ask my dad about that one. A lot of Eddie was kind of nuts, man.
Well, I think that Eddie made his life very like he put a lot of pressure on Bill Walsh, and that was part of the reason why Walsh got burned out.
Right. He was burned out, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And Andy Reid in Philadelphia, don't forget, they missed the playoffs 2 straight years. He had some bad years in Philadelphia. It wasn't like, oh, Andy Reid's going to the playoffs every year and we're going to get rid of him because we want to make a change. They got rid of him because he stopped winning. Andy Reid's last 2 years in Philadelphia, he was 8-8 and then 4-12, and then he was out.
Right. I mean, it seemed like he had to transition away from Donovan McNabb, who was good, not great. And he had like a little minute with Michael Vick, who was good, not great. And he had a tough time finding that next quarterback. And he went to Kansas City, got Alex Smith, and instantly brought the best out of Alex Smith that we'd ever seen. It's like, maybe he needed to leave Philly. It seemed like he was having a tough time reloading that team. But once he went somewhere else, I don't know, maybe it was best for him. It was best. The funny thing about the whole Philly and Andy Reid breakup is that Philly won a Super Bowl first before Andy Reid. I think that's kind of interesting. Maybe it was the right thing for both places.
And I think in part because of some of the things I talked about, the luck kind of playing a factor. They won a Super Bowl with Nick Damn Foles, and they beat the greatest head coach and quarterback combination that we have seen to that point.
And they put up like 38 points in that game. It's not like they lucked into it with a bad quarterback. Like, Nick Foles lit him up. It was incredible.
Foles played really, in that short window, he played really freaking well, man.
Yeah, that's back when like RPOs completely confused defenses. They're like, what do we do? I don't know. I've never seen this before. Now it's like, that's not scaring anyone. And that's why Nick Foles doesn't play anymore. Sorry, Nick.
But I think that there's something to that. Like, you could argue that maybe Kyle's best chance to win a Super Bowl was 2019 because his offense had not spread around the league in the way it has now.
Right.
More defenses are practicing against that offense. They know more about it. There's more film on that offense than ever before. So that's part of it. You could
argue that in 2019, like the Debo, Raheem Mostert running game was borderline unstoppable. I mean, the Packers couldn't do anything with it in the NFC Championship game, and the Chiefs are on record saying, we're so glad Kyle stopped doing that stuff. Like, that was really, we couldn't. And he just stopped. He stopped running Mostert and Debo in the second half. Wild.
Every time they ran Debo in the Super Bowl, it worked. It was absurd. And it was like, who is this rookie?
He averaged like 16 yards a carry in that game. I think he averaged 16 yards a carry in that game.
Actually, I do want to check that out.
Check that out.
They were kicking ass with it, frankly. It was damn
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's over with now. Teams have adjusted to it. Even if you look at Debo's effectiveness as a runner this year, it was kind of like he had a couple of good ones, but it wasn't the same.
Also, Mike McDaniel's gone, and he wasn't the entire brain, but he was a key part of the brain trust, as we see from his results in Miami. It was nice having him on the team. He had some good ideas.
So in the Super Bowl in 2019 against the Chiefs, Deebo Samuel ran the ball 3 times for 53 yards. So that's an average of roughly 18 yards a carry.
I was close.
Now,
then what did he do in his last Super Bowl? Nothing?
He did
on the ground?
32 in that game. So that probably bumps up the average a little bit. Let me see. In this Super Bowl, also against the Chiefs, for anyone that might have forgotten, Deebo Samuel ran the ball 3 times for 8 yards.
See? 4 years later, it's not fooling anyone. So it's a great point, man. You could argue that 2019 was their best chance, and really up 10 with 7 minutes left. Was that what it was? Up 10 with 7 minutes left.
I think it was 5 in the first Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Frank says, yes, Deebo stunk as a receiver in 2019. Emmanuel Sanders was the catalyst in 2019. First of all,
I wouldn't say he sucked.
No, he had the second best rookie receiving year any 49ers receiver has ever had. He was number.
And again, the Niners went to the Super Bowl just running the ball. That team didn't. That was Jimmy Garoppolo. That his signature move was the handoff, and then he'd switch it up every once in a while with the pitch. It was great.
His signature move was the handoff and the quarterback sneak.
He was so good at the quarterback sneak.
Yeah, elite.
He was.
His only skill. That
unreal.
And having a 5 o'clock shadow at all times, like perpetual 5 o'clock shadow.
Just smiling for no reason in any situation. Jimmy, you just lost again.
He's on the Ravens now. He's on.
Can I just say something real quick? We're 41 minutes in, and my stream hasn't had any issues. I got a new laptop. It's a MacBook Pro, and Apple, thank you. HP, shame on you. Although it was $800, I guess what you get what you pay for. This was a whole lot more than that. Apple, I appreciate it. I'm feeling pretty good about streaming now.
I do have an Apple myself, and I quite enjoy it.
I do
want to bring this up because I was planning on doing it last week, and then we didn't have a show together. Serge mentioned it in the chat. Rob, are you Grant, Kyle?
I don't want people to think that I didn't do the show last week because I was mad at Rob. I had an issue. There was like a thing going on. It's a serious thing.
No, that's
Mm-hmm.
We're never afraid to talk about anything on this show.
No.
You had an article a week and a half ago, I guess, about Kyle Shanahan's stock is down. And I said that the article, I tweeted and said that the article was ridiculous. I think it is ridiculous.
And I said your face is ridiculous.
You
so
did.
Even.
I didn't really disagree. This is what I've got. So we're
you said it's true. That's funny.
His stock is down in whose eyes is the question I wanted to ask you.
Fair question. And I think we've sort of had this discussion already today. Like when I was talking earlier about maybe his own players are looking at him differently. That's sort of what I'm talking about. And I don't have any evidence to prove it. I guess all my evidence right now is the not so great attendance at OTAs, but who knows? Christian could be there today. I don't even know. So I guess it's something to look at. I just feel like the way he lost this Super Bowl kind of puts a target on his back. It's the third one he's lost. 3 is a pattern. I mean, you don't have to be a football genius to understand his history. And although it's not all his fault, I don't think there's a whole lot of players on the Niners right now who are saying, yeah, put that one on me. That was my fault. Or put it on. I was like, it was Ray's fault. Like, I think there's a lot of bitter feelings about how they lost the Super Bowl and a lot of confusion as to why. And I think he's got to own it. And I wonder if that's got his stock down a little bit. I don't think he's had to deal with that type of question before. Maybe I'm wrong.
There could be that resentment. I think you touched on something too.
Yeah.
It's not really whose fault it was. Whose fault it actually was is secondary. What matters more is the perception of is whether or not the 49ers players blame him. Whether it's true or not, who cares? But if the players blame him, that is an issue and he will have to address it. But as I said earlier in the show, we don't have any evidence that says that they do yet.
Let's look at it a different way and forget fault and blame. He's supposed to be a great coach. They're supposed to be a great team. You feel that if you get close to the finish line with a great coach, he'll have some way that he can help you get across. And maybe now his players are looking at like, maybe he can't. Maybe we can get this close and maybe he's not really going to help us get across. I'm not saying it's his fault or he didn't know the rule or whatever, but can he help us finish the job? So far, he hasn't been able to.
They may think that. We have no evidence of that right now. It's entirely possible that they do.
None.
And I think that there are times when, especially in Super Bowls, so we saw this with the Seahawks and Pete Carroll, like that coaching decisions can destroy team locker room cohesion. It happened in Seattle. They had to start shipping all those guys out.
Because they felt like we should be 2-time champions and it's your fault.
And not only is that, it's like you sacrificed our championship because you didn't want Marshawn to get the glory. You wanted Russell Wilson to get the glory.
Right. So that was very controversial. Like, why did you want Russell Wilson? What was wrong with Marshawn? Like, what was,
Now, I do think that part of that is because there was that had kind of been simmering there. There had been a feeling, especially with the Seattle defenders, that Pete was sort of coddling Russell Wilson and not calling Russell Wilson out on certain things in a way that he didn't do for other players. So then when you have that existing ahead of time, plus what happened in the Super Bowl, it just blew everything up there.
Yeah. But now, fortunately for Kyle, he didn't have that one controversial play at the goal line. But, there was like a 2nd and 4 late in the game where he could have ran. I mean, there were a lot of critical plays late in the fourth quarter and in the overtime where he passed on 2nd down or 3rd down when he could have just fed McCaffrey and put the season in his hands, and he didn't. In fact, on the last offensive play of the season for the Niners, McCaffrey, it was a play fake to McCaffrey who was in jet sweep motion. It was some play they'd never run before. Strange.
Which I'm not necessarily against that. I kind of like that idea, right? Do something you've literally never done, because how's the defense going to prepare for something you've never done?
I'd rather dress up something you've done a million times, because then at least you feel confident you can execute it. Of course, you don't want to show something that you've shown before, but that's what, different formations, motions, window dressing is for. Ideally, you want to run a concept that you've run and you feel comfortable, you feel confident in. And that was new. That was almost like a gadget play.
And I'm not saying this to let anybody off the hook, but when I talk about luck being more of a thing in football because it's a one and done situation, like you worked hard, you got all the way down, overtime of the Super Bowl, you're on the doorstep, you're about to score, it's a critical play, and you have your 4th round offensive lineman decide to go rogue and not do what he should have done and follow the actual play. He goes rogue. That opens up a pass rusher. It's incomplete. Now, I still think Kyle should have gone for it on 4th down, but I'm just saying, like, in football, because of the nature of the sport, those things have a bigger impact than they do in the NBA, which is a series.
Right. I'm just saying, like, for sure, they didn't execute those passes well. But instead of passing on 3rd and 4, you could run on 3rd and 4. Like, if you felt you had a Hall of Fame running back, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, you could run on 3rd and 4. That sets up probably 4th and 3, 4th and 2, 4th and 1. And then you go for it. But Kyle didn't do that. Instead, he faked to McCaffrey so he could do something tricky and throw the ball. It's like, how much confidence do you have in McCaffrey? He's the offensive player of the year. He's the offense. He's the engine of everything. So lean on him here. I mean, if you had Derrick Henry, you would. That's my thing with Kyle. Like, you can be so good for so long, but in the critical moment, it's like, what was that, man? Like, that's not you. That's not this team. That's not you. I don't get it. And I guess you'd have to call that if someone acts out of character under pressure, what is that?
I don't think it's out of character for him, though. Like, him not going for it is totally in character. That's
touche.
That's the 3rd down play. You could easily make an argument like you have that they should have run a different play, and that's fine. But whatever play you can on 3rd down doesn't stop you from going for it on 4th down. That, to me, my bigger criticism of Kyle is that he remained in character. He should have abandoned what he always did.
Like, real quick, at the end of the 4th quarter, 3:27 left, McCaffrey runs left tackle for 5 yards. It's 2nd and 5 at the Kansas City 35. You're right in position to run the clock down and win the game on a walk-off field goal. But what do? On 2nd and 5, you throw the ball to Kittle for no gain. And on 3rd and 5, you throw the ball incomplete against that blitz. You go pass, and then you kick. So instead of taking off another minute, there's 1:57 left, and you're up 3. That's you could have put the game away right there. And I feel like Kyle's great, but in that one little situation, other coaches would have taken that one home. Like, you would win right there. Run the clock down. 2nd and 5. Run the freaking ball. Like, what do you do? Well, how could you stop the clock for them on 3rd and 5? I don't know, man. But there's just little moments like that. Then, I mean, let's go to overtime. Then you go to overtime. You have the ball. It's 1st and 10 at the 15. You hand off to McCaffrey. He goes for 6. 2nd and 4. You hand off to McCaffrey. He goes for no gain. And now you got a dilemma. What do you want to do on 3rd and 4? You could run, or you could get the ball to McCaffrey some way instead of faking it to him. But they pass, and it's incomplete, and you kick a field goal. So those are the two. Those are the two big moments.
Those were definitely the two moments. I understand the passing on the 3rd down. You had just run it 2 straight times in overtime. I have no problem with passing in that spot. I don't even necessarily, I mean, I don't know that I would have drawn it up for Juwan Jennings to be the guy, the number 1 option there, but the pass I was fine with. But look,
no wonder Juwan Jennings is holding out. Hey, with the season on the line, I was the guy.
Well, it's leverage too, right? I'm sure McCaffrey feels like, I'm just coming off on Offensive Player of the Year. I'm coming off a career high in rushing yards. I have the most leverage I'm probably ever going to have. So he's staying away from OTAs. And Juwan Jennings probably says the same thing, right? I was just going to be the Super Bowl MVP, especially if he makes that catch. If he made that catch and they scored, like, he's probably going to be the MVP of the game. So he probably feels like he has as much leverage as possible too.
Let's go back and linger on the end of the 4th quarter just because I'm being a jerk. So 1st and 10, they run the ball 5 yards. 2nd and 5, they throw the ball to Kittle for no gain. That's rough. But at least the clock's still moving. And then on 3rd and 5, they have to pass. If they had run on 2nd and 5 and gotten to 3rd and 3, they could have run the ball again.
They don't
taking some more time off the clock. See, if they run on 3rd down here, they kick the field goal with 1:57 left. They could have taken another, 40 seconds off the clock or forced Kansas City to use a timeout. Like, that's a critical play. Because if Kansas City gets the ball with 1:27 left, that's a different game. They score with like 6 seconds left on the clock in regulation.
See, I don't think they needed to run on 3rd and 5. Or needed to pass, on 3rd and 5. I think they should have run it because it keeps the clock moving. So Kansas City probably uses a timeout. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But whatever they do, you win in that scenario. If they use a timeout, great. They've burned one. If not, you run time off the clock. Because if you still wanted to kick the field goal on 4th down, you could do that. It doesn't stop you. You might get the 1st down on 3rd down if you run it, but also you might get 4 yards.
Right.
4th and 1, and then you can decide to go for it there. I actually thought that running in that spot gave you more options. There were more positive outcomes for you if you ran it in that spot. So that was a criticism that I had.
Yeah, I mean, 2nd and 5 at the Chiefs 35 with 2:45 left. Like, man, you're in a great spot right there. You're in such a good spot. And it seems like what you're playing for there is you're trying to use up clock. What you want more is to use up clock, not to get yards. You're already in a good spot. You need like 5 more yards maybe, but what you really need to do is use up a minute. And that's one right there. End of the 4th quarter.
You are dictating in that spot. You are in control.
You know what Harbaugh would have done if they had Frank Gore in that 2nd and 5 from the 35 with 2 minutes left, 2:45 left. They're running the ball.
Well, running the ball. Trent said it before that play. He was like, if we get the 1st down here, we're gonna kill their timeouts and we're gonna run clock. Like, they understood the importance of that moment. Or at least Trent did. Maybe the other guys didn't.
That's right.
He literally.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, you could argue that was the moment where they had like the best opportunity to really put the game away. Although in overtime they were at the freaking 9. The 9.
Brother Bob, YouTube channel member, shout out to Brother Bob. We appreciate you. Says, listen, Kyle Levy is good, not great. The Super Bowl is equal proof. Well, let me ask you this, Grant. Let's say Kyle wins the Super Bowl this year. Are you going to not say any of that? Because, I mean, his record in Super Bowls would be 1-2 at that point. I'm not including the Falcons offensive coordinator stuff. It would be 1-2. Are you like, would you be able to say, oh, nope, turns out he's fine in Super Bowls? Like, or would you still have criticism?
I would have to give him a lot of praise. I mean, criticize him from winning the Super Bowl. I don't think I'm that crazy, man. I'm nuts. But I don't think I'm going to find a way to criticize him for winning the Super Bowl. No, if he does that, I think it would, maybe people would disagree, but in my eyes, it would probably show growth and change and improvement. And you'd have to praise that. A lot of people feel like he's been this good forever. So, eye the beholder.
J. Cruz, 49er, makes a good point. Harbaugh didn't run inside the 5 in the Super Bowl. This guy just trolls. I'm out. Sorry, stats. I can't stand this dude. Jim Harbaugh did pass 3 times in the Super Bowl against the Ravens on the stupidest sequence of play calls I've seen in my friggin' life. Anyway, I'm not bitter, though. But
yeah, but it was a different situation. It wasn't a tie game.
They were losing, and I don't remember the timeout situation off the top of my head.
But I'm sorry that guy doesn't like me. I tried. Sorry.
What was that? That was 2012 that year. Now you're going to make me relive this because it's just going to bug the hell out of me. The 49ers at that time.
They couldn't have won the game with the field goal if I remember correctly. They were down big in that game. They were trying to come back.
It was 20. They were down 5. It was 34-20.
They're down 5. Okay.
They get to the 1st and goal at the 7. They run LaMichael.
So it's what you call a completely different situation.
Yeah, I don't remember the timeout situation.
You got me, though.
The Niners did have at least one timeout because they used one on the following possession. But, yeah, he did pass it half field reads to Michael Crabtree again and again and again. God, dude.
They called a quarterback draw for Colin Kaepernick on one of those plays, but then didn't get the playoff in time and had to call timeout. Remember that?
Well, I know that they had all
great.
sorts of problems. Was one of those a quarterback draw? I actually kind of like that call in that spot.
It probably would have worked too. And they called timeout. I think it was 3rd and goal. And then they went back, thought about it, and they're like, you know what? Fade to Crabtree. Whoo.
You know what? Like, do you think Colin ever thinks about that? Like, what if I would have had the ball in my hands, the Super Bowl in my hands, if we had just gotten that play? Because I know he thinks he's going to score if he gets the ball in his hands at that point.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think there's a lot of resentment privately. Like, why didn't we win that Super Bowl? I'm sure no one really cares about the 2012 49ers, but people care about the 2014 Seahawks because they had just won a Super Bowl. That was a championship team that feels like they got robbed. The Niners aren't a championship team. So privately, they can talk about whose fault it was. Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, Colin Kaepernick, Michael Crabtree, but no one cares. And that's the problem with this team, the Niner team right now. Like, if they miss this opportunity, no one's going to care about them in 10 years. None of these guys. So they got to get this. Rings really matter.
Slick68 says NFL is rigged. The 49ers were ordered to lose. Ugh. I know that one of my co-hosts, Levin, was all...
Why are you watching then?
Right. That's the thing.
Why do you watch?
If you think but when they win, it's not rigged, though, right?
Why are you watching a podcast about football in May? How are you that locked in if you think it's all rigged?
Hey, we appreciate you watching. Thank you.
We do. I didn't mean to shame you away. Thank you very much I just think you're lying to yourself, man. You're into it. You love it. Unless you follow the WWE just with the same amount of vigor.
Well, people do follow the WWE. I'd like to have their ratings. I'll say that. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Please rate, review, and follow both YouTube channels, the Gold Standard Network YouTube channel and Grant's YouTube channel as well. Grant, coming up the rest of the day. I know you're going to the Niners facility. You got a show at night too?
Yeah. So show with Jesse, 6:00, Niners After Dark, practice at 12:30 Pacific, probably an hour. And then after that, there will be, I believe it's going to be Sorensen, Forrester, and Schneider, the 3 coordinators, and then some players. And then the good and the not so good. And then driving home and doing an instant reaction, instant analysis. That's the day, man. Maybe I'll hit the driving range later tonight because now I'm addicted to golf. And I can't even say that I'm good. And I can't even say that I'm not bad. I'm not terrible sometimes, but it's fun. I'm trying to get into it.
Yeah, that's every golfer addicted to golf, whether or not they're good or not. I'm right there in the same boat with you. I'm interested to see which players get to speak because if McCaffrey's not there, Brock already spoke, Bosa's already spoke. Like, who are they going to get to go up behind the podium? It's going to be like,
let's guess. Who's going to talk today?
Kittle.
I mean, you can't ask Fred Warner or George Kittle to talk when they're not practicing, right?
I don't know.
Kittle's technically hurt.
Who's it going to be?
So maybe Fred Warner.
Fred,
Diamador, Lenore.
Maybe Mooney.
McKivitz. They never bring McKivitz. Aaron Banks. They don't bring him. You got me, man. I don't. Is it a use check day? Please not. The thing about use check is like no offense to him, he tries really hard, but what do you ask him? You always have to ask him about other people, other players. It's like you can't ask 18 fullback questions.
Here's what you
So when you went in motion from the left to the right, how did that feel?
Hey, Juice, how do you feel about being off the field more than you were on the field last year? That'd be my first question. Hey, Juice.
You know what's interesting, too, before we go? I feel like what he gets paid and what Jennings gets paid matters because there's sort of a battle for like who should be on the field, Jennings or Juszczyk. So they kind of have to make the same amount of money, like right around $5 million, so that Kyle doesn't feel pressured to play one over the other. Because frankly, I think they're better with Jennings on the field.
I think there's a reason they asked Juice to take a big pay cut.
Yep. You can't be making that much more money than Jennings when we're going to be playing Jennings. Sorry. Or Pearsall.
Jennings can only make what he makes because of the tender. Like, it's not a negotiation.
Don't tell Jennings that, though. He's holding out.
Yeah. Good luck, Jawan. Oh, man. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next week.